transcript will be placed on the States Assembly website in due course. I just remind people please to turn off their mobile phones and any other devices. So just by way of introduction, I am Deputy Helen Miles, I'm chair of the panel.
I'm Deputy Catherine Curtis, the Vice Chair of the panel.
Thank you.
And Richard Honeycomb, Connétables of St One.
Thank you. And
Mike Jackson, Constable St Brelard and Chair of the Comité de Connétables.
okay, and just to confirm that you're here in your capacity as Chair of the Comité de Connétables today.
Indeed.
Okay, thank you. We've got 1 hour set aside for the hearing today. If it runs over, maybe you've got a spare 5 or 10 minutes, being that the States finished early yesterday. That's why we were squashing in. First of all, I'd just like to say we have received the submission, a very detailed submission, and we have some questions about the submission, but also just about other general areas as well. So thank you. So I'm going to start off. This is an appreciative inquiry, we've said that all along, and what we want to produce from this report is an evidence base of where we are and where the relationship between the parishes and the government is at 2025, so that decisions that are made that might affect the parish in future times are actually based on some evidence. So it's specifically about the relationship between the parishes and the government. It's not an inspection of the parish, it never has been, and I think there has been some confusion over that. So really the first question is about relationship with government. How do you describe the current working relationship between the parishes and the government?
I don't believe we have any difficulties. Truthfully, as you'll be aware, several of us wear different hats, if you like, in that some connétables will have a ministerial role, others will have an assistant ministerial role, and that's helpful to a large extent in terms of communications and networking to ensure that we are all singing from the same hymn sheet, which I think is important, but I'm not aware of any difficulties.
Okay, so how does the government engage with the parishes then in general?
If there are any particular projects being considered by governments, we will be consulted through the Comité office, and generally that will have the effect of each connétable having the ability, should we say, to have input into whatever's being consulted upon. And I think the government departments will follow the usual consultation process. So I think we have adequate input in that way. Likewise, for those involved directly with particular departments, they will probably have a stronger input and inform officers in that particular department what might work or what might not.
And when it works the other way round, so if the Comité have a particular area of interest or an area of discussion, how does the Comité engage with government?
Once again, by direct communication with the particular department, we may be aware that is dealing with that particular situation, or whether it be the law officers, the law drafting department. So we have access to really the same individuals as government, and in terms of officer specialisations, we won't be afraid to ask, and we will get a polite response, I'm sure, as in most cases.
Okay, thank you.
I just hearing you say about consultation from government to the parish is working well generally, but that made me think about the alcohol licensing. Do you think it worked well in that case?
Well, there's different ways of looking at that, and in effect, the alcohol licensing proposition was put forward by the minister. He did a lot of consultation. We put in, the Comité put in an amendment on the basis of that consultation which had been received, and we fully agreed with what was being proposed in terms of the reduction of the licence categories, if you like, and we have no difference with that. What we did differ with was the administration side of it, and it's not really an area that particularly interested the hospitality industry. We have met with them subsequently, and they are just keen to get the whole process simplified and possibly made cheaper, and that's what we're working towards at the moment.
Okay. Did you feel that the parishes were listened to properly in that case?
I don't think they were listened to by the hospitality industry, who probably didn't understand that we were in full agreement with what the minister was proposing in terms of making the system simpler. And the proposals coming through were that the parishes would provide a one-stop shop and just make the whole process of applying for a licence similar. Notwithstanding that, there is a level to be retained in terms of dealing with managers, which we deal with anyway. And the argument coming from principally the parish of St Helier, who deal with the lion's share of licence applications, was they do all the work anyway, and a little bit more wouldn't have proved too difficult. I do anticipate that there is another amendment coming down the line which might suggest that the administration remains broadly as it is, in that the licensing bench, as we note at the moment, will remain. So we'll have to keep our eyes open for that. And I suspect the Comité or the constables generally would agree with that focus. And if it's simpler for the applicants, I think it's got to be the right way to go.
Okay, thank you. Are there any kind of opportunities for the parishes and the government to work even more closely or more efficiently together?
Possibly in terms of road administration, and I might talk out of turn with other constables. We all have road systems in our parishes. We have our by roads. Likewise in St Helier, they have parish administered roads and public roads. And quite frankly, I think for the general public, it's quite confusing. They've evolved over years. It's almost easier in the country parishes because in the, I think it was the 30s, it was decided that it was unfair for parishes to take responsibility for the main roads which visitors would use in going to the beaches. So at that time, it was decided to split them off. I don't know if it's terribly sensible in this day and age, but we have the situation where we're seeing at the moment roads are dug up for all sorts of things. And from my personal point of view in St Ballard, we have issues, and other constables have the same thing. Their parish roads get dug up, and actually the integrity of the road is very often wrecked when that takes place. And there's a constant battle with utility companies, and that can be the same for government. And that area needs good management. It's going in the right direction by virtue of the fact that there is a traffic works system, which we all subscribe to, and that has the effect of letting everybody know what's going on and when. There was a comment in the last state sitting on Tuesday, where the Constable of Trinity particularly was remarking on the fact that due to the major roadworks going on in terms of drainage, his parish roads were getting unreasonably damaged, and what was the minister going to do about it? So there is quite a lot of crossover there.
Okay. And as chair of the Comité de Connétables, you sit as an ex officio member of the Council of Ministers.
I do.
Okay, so that is a case of attending the meetings, being able to contribute to debates, but not having a vote.
Well, it depends on the nature of the vote, because in my particular situation, I am an assistant environment minister,
Okay.
so that will give me a vote if that is the parameters of that particular discussion.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'll just ask some questions now about the committee. So as chair, how would you describe the way the Comité de Connétables operates?
Well, we have a broadly monthly meeting in alternative parish halls. The 12 constables will attend. The Comité secretaries will attend, and those meetings will be minuted. There will be publicly available minutes. The minutes for the areas where maybe policy under discussion will be confidential. We invite the public to the public bits, if you like, if I can call them that, and the policy under development areas will be confidential and maybe come out in subsequent months if agreement is achieved by on whatever subject. So the meetings generally run from 9 till 1 or thereabouts. So it's the whole morning. We invite parties to present to us, and it goes back to the consultation discussion earlier. Those who wish to consult with the Comité will be invited to make a presentation, which regularly occurs. On the other hand, we may invite government officers or ministers to present to us if there are areas which we wish to expand on or wish them to expand on further. So it's a busy morning. The agenda is drawn up the previous week and circulated. So we all contribute in our various ways, and I have to say I'm grateful for other councillors for their contributions during those meetings.
And the minutes, are they published, or the Part A is published?
Yes, no, the Part A is published and available on the Comité website.
Okay, and we read the submission and saw there was quite a bit about training, but what arrangements are in place for the induction and training of newly elected Connétables?
It's, I'd say, probably in the past been relatively ad hoc, in that we have, there are two elements to it. One is the states element, and obviously you'll be aware that GREF put together a training programme, if we can call it that. From the Comité point of view, there will be an induction meeting, and I think those who, should we say, remain from a previous term are always happy to impart their knowledge to people who are new on the block. It's worked in the past, and I hope that if we can contribute to what the GREF do, I think anybody's more than happy to do that.
Do they get the usual training like safeguarding, data protection, all these sort of things?
Certainly in terms of data protection, the Comité office is strong on that, and each parish does its own training from the data protection point of view.
So the Connétables would get that?
Each parish will do its own data protection training, and they will, the council will generally retain a data protection officer with whom we can consult should we wish.
Okay. Do you think that's sufficient then?
Seems to have worked so far.
Okay. The Comité emphasises the importance of independence from government funding, but are there any circumstances in which closer alignment or shared support with government would be acceptable, do you think?
Well, I think we have to consider the funding of the parishes. It's not so much the funding of the Comité, because the Comité is funded by the parishes, which in turn are funded by the ratepayer. So anything we do will have a consequence on the ratepayer. And our finances are very open and democratic, if you like, when it comes to rates assessment assemblies. Government is different, and I suppose one could argue that government has expanded exponentially over recent years, and we've seen the expansion of headcount, whereas the parishes have stayed much the same in terms of headcount. And I think most councils are quite keen to keep it like that and keep costs under control, and that's the way it's done at the moment is quite a good way of doing it.
So there's that valuing of independence, but also, like in the play parks, there was some which were supported by government, which has been withdrawn, that financial support. So do you think there might be more need for some financial?
I think I could say it in a different way. I think most parishes would gratefully receive additional funding if it's perhaps a government desire to implement a particular project. I think we would expect some government input. I mean, if it might be a new government project or directive, it would only be reasonable that they would contribute towards it. I mean, in terms of play parks, it is a shame that whilst the government will expound about the support for play parks, unless there's cash there, it's not really worth any the paper it's written on.
Yeah, okay. So perhaps for particular projects then. Yeah, okay,
Indeed.
thank you. Now I've got some questions about perhaps the strengths and the future direction of the Comité. So I was going to ask what aspects of the Comité's work function particularly well, but I think you've mentioned really some of that already with all the Connétables coming together. And
We do,
yeah.
yes, and any matters of discussion are raised. Any council can raise anything at a Comité meeting. under any other business should they so wish, and they do, and they can be discussed and taken forward with the agreement of others should they so wish.
Okay, are there any areas where you feel the Comité could develop or enhance its role?
I think we're always open to suggestions, and maybe that could be led by technology as time goes on.
Yeah.
There have been discussions over voting only this morning with a journalist I had asking could we develop easier ways for parishioners to vote at parish assemblies. And my comment then was, well, I think we would need to follow technology, the technological lead from government. And I think it's fair to say the GREF are seeking a solution to that in some shape or form. So I think we have to be patient. Yes, we'd all like to be able to, for people to be able to vote at parish assemblies remotely, but in terms of security, we haven't arrived at that yet, but I'm sure we will before too long.
Okay, so there is that interaction with government there, and then the Comité's role would be to help with different parishes.
Well, yes, indeed. We have to look after our own parishes, and of course, when we get to elections, there's a lot of crossover and input from the parishes who have the experience of running elections. We've seen quite a lot of change in the past 2 or 3 terms over the election process. Some for the good and some not so good in my view, but it's a process which evolves, and we continue to contribute to ensure the best outcome for the voting electorate.
Okay, and are there any activities that the Comité currently undertakes which you feel may not sit naturally within its remit, things that have just sort of ended up being the Comité's role?
Well, I think most councils are willing to contribute to the general operation of the island, if I can call it that. And whilst there are some elements which may stray outside its remit, I don't think its remit is particularly defined as such. So I think most parishes, because they are dealing with all island issues, will have to consider a degree of overlap. Except when it comes to spending money, where we'll probably tend to resist.
Okay. And in your submission, you describe variation between parishes as a strength rather than a weakness. But are there any areas where you think greater consistency would improve outcomes for parishioners?
I think where there is a potential for better outcomes, yes, we certainly would. And of course, this takes place in certain areas such as driving licence, dog licences and so forth, where we all use the same system. And in fact, the rates system broadly uses the rate system, and but it can be interpreted with slight variations in parishes. But when you analyse it down, the variations are not great, and it will be down to the rate assessors of the day, how they deal with that within the guidelines provided. As I mentioned, dogs has a central system, a recent system called Poodle, which deals with that side, and the police have access to that. So I think where we can use common systems, we do, and happy to continue to do so. And once again, technology will enable us to do that.
And just my last question for now. If you did have one Connétable out of everyone just not agreeing to do what everyone else wanted, is there anything you can do about that on the Comité?
Not really. I mean, there will be always an agreement to differ in certain situations, but I have to say we tend to make decisions based on consensus, and we don't really have, in my experience, too much in the way of battles at the Comité table. And I think maybe because Connétables tend to be of a certain demographic with a certain amount of life experience under their belts, they are quite well equipped to come to compromises, and we certainly do. And I mean, some Connétables will have, should we say, knowledge specialities in certain areas, and I think the rest of us are very keen to take that on board and learn from that and make decisions based on their experience as much as anything else.
That's good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a quorum at the committee?
No,
No quorum.
No.
So decisions could be made with maybe just one or two of you there.
rarely, I don't recall that ever happening quite
Okay,
frankly.
thank you. One of the things that has been raised is about whether the Comité de Connétables should be a statutory body with clearly defined rules and responsibilities. And certainly in your submission, you have stated that it already is a statutory body. I think we have observed a distinction between a body established in statute and a body that is assigned functions by statute, and we were just wondering how you understand that particular distinction.
I think it's fair to say, looking at the records, if you like, it's a bit woolly, but I think there's a presumption that it is in effect a statutory body, and I say in effect quite sort of guardedly, in fact, because that's almost what it says, and the advice from a previous greffier pretty well said that going back. I asked myself, having read this, actually, what difference does it make? Not sure that it does make any difference at all. The reality is we probably don't want to be a statutory body of the states, because then it would be for the states to actually dictate what we do. So in a way, the present situation is probably the best way to deal with it.
So is that kind of sort of making the play for very independent? So as Connétable, you are, independent to your particular parish?
Well, yes. Yes, I think we are. And I think it's fair to say that we guard that privilege quite jealously. And it's important. Jersey has this parish system which has worked for years. And I'm sort of the view that if it ain't broke, why fix it? So I think we haven't discussed the question of the statutory nature of the Comité amongst ourselves. I mean, we may do so, and it'd be interesting to see what others think. But at the moment, personally, I don't think it's an issue that's causes concern.
Your submission is quite clear. The Comité is a statutory body, and the submission cites that it's been set up by law, but it actually cites the standing orders of the states of Jersey, which of course are not statutes. They are rules. And also, whereas the states of Jersey law sets up the Council of Ministers as a statutory body, if you like, the Comité de Connétables are sort of absent in any of this. And the reason that we ask the question is that as a body, the Comité are able to bring forward legislation, effectively develop policy, undertake consultation, etc. And I think the question is really rooted in whether a statutory nature of the body would actually make that more legitimate.
It's a point that could be argued. I mean, I'm not a legislative drafter in those terms. I think it could merit further discussion. I think that was probably the simple answer to that.
Okay, thank you. In terms of further discussion as well, one of the questions that we asked was about this role of parish assemblies, and in particular around the report that was prepared by the Law Commission. I think it was prepared by Advocate Pullo, which recommended quite a lot of changes to the parish assembly, such as virtual attendance and voting and the like. But nothing seems to have happened since that report was published. And we were just wondering what the kind of Comité's views are on the recommendations in that report.
Well, I think the recommendations came out of meetings with Advocate Pullo and the Comité, and so we're supportive of what's being proposed. In terms of the development of those to fruition, of course, remote voting is challenging, and as I suggested earlier, we tried it during the COVID period. It's expensive at the moment in terms, and it's expensive in one way in terms of actually broadcasting the meetings, and secondly, the security element of the voting is not quite there yet. And I think the graph will tell you that whilst they're working hard on it, we're not there, because obviously we're coming up to elections, there's quite a lot of enthusiasm for that. So my feel is that once the graph establish a secure route, I suspect the parishes will follow soon after.
Okay.
I think it would be helpful.
I think again it's this sort of not a conflict. I suppose there's a tension between the GREF are doing stuff to provide for government and citizens, where the parishes are very clearly independent, and you're very rightly proud and protective of your own parish assembly system. So what are the realistic next steps for the parishes, or are you simply waiting for the GREF to produce a solution?
I think, given that we have a very limited resource, I've got 3 part-timers at the Comité office. I think we have to sensibly wait for the GREF to come up with a solution. We are involved with the automatic voter registration programme, so we are in constant discussion, if you like, over that. So I think we will be appraised, if you like, once we're in a position to advance that.
But I guess, I mean, what we're getting at is, will the Comité try and bring forward the recommendations and the changes to legislation that were recommended in the Parish Assemblies report?
I think certain of them, standing apart from the remote voting issue, which would follow up from the GREF, I think the other ones, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't.
Okay. Because the proposal in the report is to repeal the 1804 law, which is probably about time it was repealed, and the 1905 law, and actually to recast them in English. But at the moment, there's no impetus to do that. The report is simply sat on a shelf. So would it be the Comité that come forward and suggest that is done?
Yes, I think we would. I mean, I suppose there's several of us in the Comité are quite traditionalists and actually don't have a problem reading the French laws. But truthfully, I think in fairness to the majority of the public, it would probably be better if they were recast. One of the issues with having them in French, if there were to be any particular changes, and there have been some changes over the years, they tend to be in English, and they're not compatible with each other. So I think Avocat Pallo convinced me that was the case, and I accept that.
So I'm just trying to get about where it is in terms of priority, because clearly the Comité have brought forward the dogs law, they've brought forward amendments to the alcohol licensing, and yet the principal pieces of legislation that relate to what happens for their parishioners don't seem to have been progressed or even sort of discussed.
I think, given the importance of other matters, I think it's fair to say it's on the to-do list, and it'll be for the next Comité after June to consider how to do that.
What are your views then on the feedback that some parishioners are unsure what a parish assembly is for and how they can get involved and the like?
Well, all parishes are very open to discussion with their parishioners, and the parish halls are a very good place to do that, should they so wish. It's interesting that those who perhaps have contributed don't actually ask the parishes. Constables, like all politicians in their particular parishes, are more approachable than anywhere in the United Kingdom. We're all on the end of a phone, and it's just a question very often of asking. We try and put as much as we can on the parish websites. We all have parish websites, and invites contributions, volunteers for all sorts. I mean, bear in mind, we have a lot of volunteers already. We have not only the honorary police, we have roads committees, rate assessors, and those positions, as they become available, are always advertised on the parish websites. Sometimes there's a take-up, sometimes there isn't.
Do you think there's a broader role for the parishes to actually explain the internal workings of the parishes to parishioners, particularly as our community is becoming more diverse?
Yes, I wouldn't argue against that, and I think whatever channels we can use to do that, the better. I mean, gone are the days where the only communication you had to do was put an advertisement in the Evening Post. Nowadays, there are a multitude of media platforms, and I think not only in the parishes but also government is exploring how those might work best for the various demographics.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to hand you over to Connétables Honeycomb now, so you can see the disjointed voice. You're on mute, Connétables.
That's better. I thought you all heard me. I asked if I wanted a cup of tea, so I was very careful what I actually. I didn't want you to hear me eating my biscuits. Afternoon, Mike.
Afternoon.
Do you think the parishes use demographic information when planning or adapting services? For example, looking at the ageing population and providing community support?
I think we need to, and different parishes have, I call it different methodologies. I know St Clement's has been in the past quite a leader in that, and they have certainly a strength in that area, and I think we can learn from them. For my part, I know that we've had volunteer groups dealing with exactly that. I think we could do better. It is a question of getting volunteers to come on board to actually develop that. We can back it up with the parish administration as best we can, but going back to people volunteering, those are the people we need to help those in the, should we say, the older demographic. It's a question of helping with shopping, perhaps helping with transport to medical appointments, and that sort of thing. Maybe just help with fixing a light bulb. And I think that's a service that the parishes should provide as best they can.
Do St Bernard's themselves have a community support group? I mean, in St One, I know St Clement, but St One we've got, I think it's 34 people who are regularly called on to take people to appointments and various parts of the island. Does St Bernard's have one?
We did. We haven't got anything specific at the moment, and it's the parish staff who deal with it at the moment. Notwithstanding that, it's something that I'm keen to develop further with volunteers, and it is a question of getting the right staff member in the parish hall to administer it, because whilst we can get volunteers to actually deal with the should we say, the problems that the older demographic might have, it does need administration. I think it's only fair to say that most parishes should be able to provide that within their administrative structure, but you do need the right person to do it.
Do you think it's something that the Comité could, put forward to? I mean, I think there's only a couple of parishes that have got a community support group that, we could sort of put pressure on the constables to provide this, because it's getting more and more important with an ageing population. I mean, we've got people on the road every day of the week, and especially with the new hospital at St Bernard's, people are without our support group, they'd have to travel to town to get a bus to travel back up to St Bernard's. And I just wondered whether it's something that we could put forward at the Comité.
Well, I'd certainly be happy to take that forward on your suggestion, and I think it would be well received. I mean, we've developed with government a bus service not only directly to the hospital, talking about the hospital, but also from town. The 12A runs up directly outside, as does the 10, which is coming cross-country from St John's. So I think there is enthusiasm to assist those who have transportation difficulties as far as we can. But I think you're absolutely right, and that's something we can do a lot of work in developing. I'd be happy to support that.
Okay, and you've highlighted the increased use of online services. How do you think the parishes ensure parishioners who are digitally excluded are not disadvantaged?
Well, that's a challenge, and I think we have to be careful not to put all our eggs into one basket. I think those who don't do digital, obviously they have the option to get to the parish hall and for an assembly or whatever, and that is their route at the moment. And I think those are people we do see quite a lot of. And clearly, an in-person assembly is a far better thing than doing it remotely. I think it's fair to say, because you get the exchanges and debate which takes place there. Doing it remotely or through some sort of Teams or Zoom channel is never quite the same. And I think you lack the ability to have the exchanges which do arise from the floor of the parish assembly.
I think that's why I think it's so important with the having a parish hall and having daily, we probably thought 30, 40, 50 people coming in. And again, a lot of elderly with sort of questions, with forms that they can't complete. And I think it's still, and the problem is with looking forward with the way technology is going, that I mean, there's going to be calls before long that the annual return is going to be sent out digitally. I mean, we've probably got 40% now of our rates forms are sent out digitally and completed and sent back digitally. And I think it's so important that we don't get lost by everything going out and not and the people being disadvantaged by not having the ability to have a parish hall where they can come and sort of sort it out.
I would agree. I think it's clear that the direction of travel is towards digital, but you quite rightly say we can't ignore those who don't and are probably never going to do it. So I can vouch that the counter at our parish hall is always a busy place, as it is, I'm sure, in all parishes.
Yeah. So what are your views on parishes working jointly to deliver services such as refuse and recycling?
Well, of course, some do, and I can say that St Brelade's and St Peter collude in that vein. It does tend to depend on the contractor of the day and what their capacity might be. I believe that St John are colluding with St Helier, I think it is, and I think St Saviour collude with St Helier in certain areas. So I think there is at the moment, maybe there is capacity for more of that, but it really depends on the contractor involved. I mean, as you know, some parishes do it independently, some contract out. For us, the contracting out works best. We have what we think, and I know St Peter's would agree, an efficient collection service. Don't have any complaints, and we're very satisfied with the contractor. So we wouldn't really want to change from that. It is one of the highest expenses in the parish in terms of parishioners' rates. I think we can do better with regard to recycling, and it might be a question of working more closely with government as to how that can be achieved. We're often compared with the Guernsey situation, which is quite different because they don't have an incinerator or energy from waste plant. Everything is exported at significant cost. So we have to look for our own solutions, but I think there needs to be better incentivization for people to recycle, and that's something with government I think we have to work on.
I mean, St one of the parishes that carry out everything in-house, and it works for us from the point of view that it means that by the time they've finished the round, we've got 5 or 6 guys that have then got till 3 o'clock to do a lot of other work, which saves us a fortune in potholes, road cleaning, broncage. And I'm surprised that it's a sort of a large capital cost, but I still think that it works out sort of cheaper from our point of view because we've got that pool of labour once we've finished the actual refuse collection. And so I think that there's a possibility in the future. I think that some of the parishes should, club together, because it's certainly cheaper, I think, if the parishes do it rather than getting a contractor in, because we're just doing it at cost, where a contractor obviously needs to make money out of it.
Yes, I wouldn't disagree, as long as you've got the parish administration to be able to manage it, and it's probably easier in a smaller parish than it would be in a larger one. In speaking with St Brelade's, we have had an independent contractor for an awful long time, certainly 20 years plus, and it's worked for us. I can fully understand what you're saying with regard to flexibility, and I think that's the charm, if I can use that word, of the parishes, where we can be flexible. And in terms of road staff, if you like, I would say from my experience, some parishes will have a larger road staff than others, and the more flexibly they can be used for the various issues that arise with the roads, whether it's cleaning, dealing with trees, flooding, or what have you, it's got to be an advantage. It does depend on the start of the day, I would say, but I think that I'm all for collaborative working if it can be achieved.
Do you think there's any mileage in looking for joint contracts between parishes, do you think?
I think probably. I mean, the arrangement we have with St Bernard and St Peter's is not a joint contract, but it's an agreement almost to use the same contractor. It's not to say that shouldn't be developed into a joint contract arrangement, but I think what you suggest merits consideration.
With St Mon now use a subcontractor, St Saviour, to do our road cleaning. They do 4 sweeps a year for us. And again, that works out better from our point of view, that to purchase one vehicle's 150 to 200,000, and it works out from our point of view very good. And I think that there's potential for other parishes to do something similar.
Well, speaking once again for St Bernard's, we have arrangements with I&E, with their road sweeping team, whereby our manual road sweepers, for want of a better description, sweep the should we say, awkward areas of St Albans in exchange for I&E dealing with some simpler roads where they can pass a road sweeper through. So, yes, I think joint working can have its advantages. And you say, these machines don't come cheap.
So, what do you think of the perspective on the proposals St Helier deliver refuse and recycling services across all parishes?
I have a suspicion it would be more. It would cost more than we're spending at the moment, but there's no reason why that shouldn't be analysed.
Yeah. Okay, thanks very much. I've just got one comment if I could make. It's just regarding a comment you made about quorum, Mike. The specified quorum for both Comité to Connétables and Supervisory Committee have a quorum at 7 members are required for a quorum.
That could well be the case with the supervisory, and I think there are certain elements of the Comité decisions over accounts and expenditure where we do require the full 12, obviously, because there will be an implication on all the parishes. So actually, you might be right in terms of the 7, and I haven't got that information in front of me.
If you look, and I'm sure Alan will look on Rule SCKP/PARLEGA-0004 and Rates Law Part 6.
I believe you.
I'll take your word for it. Thank you, Constable. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Over to Deputy Curtis.
Okay, so I have a few questions about the traditional parish system and whether modernisation is needed or not, so on. And we've just been talking about joint working, but do you have concerns about duplication of parish services and administration? So where it might be better done in one go rather than all the different parishes doing something?
I don't think so. There's quite a lot of collaboration between parishes and parish secretaries. They have a monthly meeting, and if there are operational issues that crop up they are discussed, and I suspect, well, I can assure you any overlap will be dealt with, and I don't think any parish wants to do any more work than they have to, and duplication of effort would seem pointless. So I'm confident that is dealt with at secretarial level.
So I was thinking as well about the rates system and whether, each parish having to do all the work around rates in all the postal service, everything. Is there any way to streamline that better, do you think?
Well, I don't know that there is particularly. In fact, if you look at the rate year cycle, the rate demand or the rate assessment or the initial form goes out just before Christmas. They tend to be sent out using people like ProMail, the providers from Jersey Post. That's the most economic way of doing it. They will print and post, so they'll go out that way. And of course, the parishes then will deal with those returns as they come back, as they're doing now. I mean, those ones that haven't come back will need to be pursued, and that takes some work. And at this point, take the advantage of telling people if they haven't filled in the return, please do so, because otherwise has to be in law followed up by legislation, which means the police getting involved, which just adds more effort and cost. So, but we have to get all those returns in by a certain time, so the rate assessors can then start meeting and looking at them and seeing if there are any changes and making adjustments accordingly, and then dealing with appeals or questions that may arise.
Yes, and that's a lot of work, but you don't think it could be sort of streamlined or simplified?
Well, sometimes it's that word "small is beautiful" works quite well, in that the rate assessors in the parishes are what I describe as wise sages, and that I've met them. We've had meetings with all the rate assessors, and they have a very balanced view. They understand the system. They know what needs to be done, and in trying to get some sort of equality across the island, and they certainly work to that goal. And because properties are all different, and there isn't a finite way of assessing a property, they use their judgment, which over the years has worked pretty well. If anyone has any concerns, they're happy to listen and deal with it.
Okay. Views have been expressed by some contributors who feel that the parish system no longer meets the needs of modern Jersey. So how would you respond to that view?
I think there are those who hate administration. They hate being restricted or regulated in any way. And generally speaking, the parishes are a very light touch in regulation, although they do have different responsibilities for regulation in all different areas. If you don't like the parishes, as is often said, there's a vote in the morning, isn't there? To England, I'm sure, is often jealous of the way we work over here. Whether you can compare it with the English council system, whether you can compare it with the French mayoral system, there are different legislatures which have different ways of dealing with government at a lower level, if I can call it that.
Okay. So do you think the Connétables are willing to consider change and are open to discussing potential changes where these could lead to improvements for parishioners? Because there is that strong pull of the traditional parish system, and to protect that, do you think that means that perhaps Connétables are not willing to think about change sometimes?
I would dispute that. We're all open to change, and but of course, with any change, there are inevitably consequences. And I think before embarking on that change, we have to understand fully what those consequences might be. And you might argue that the change to bring senators back in has been a good change or not. We all remain to be seen. But I mean, there are consequences. There's been enormous consequences in legislative changes just to deal with that, what we might think is a small change.
Yeah. Do you think, though, that there are also consequences in not changing when the world around you is changing?
Oh, yeah. Indeed, and I don't think any Connétable would be against change, but as I say, having been around for several years, most of us are aware of what the consequences might be.
So you think, do you think tradition and modernisation can be balanced well within the parish structure as it is?
Oh, I think so. Yes, I've got no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Concerns about that.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you. Just the last couple of questions, really, sort of the magic wand question. If you could make one change to the way the Comité or the parish system operates, what would it be?
It might be probably collectively looking at HR issues within the parishes, which can prove difficult. As I said earlier, we have limited resource. We don't have an HR department such as the State's Employment Board, so each council has to deal with the particular HR situations on their own head. As you will know, Deputy Miles, we've got some 80 staff at Maison Saint-Bernard, we've got some 20 odd in the parish. 20, I shouldn't say odd, 20 varied numbers in the parish. So there are continually issues to deal with. We could probably look at things, be more joint working with regards to property maintenance. A lot of parishes have old property which we have to maintain or dispose of. So I think all parishes have to spend quite a lot, should we say, maintaining their by regulation, by law, their parish churches and rectories, and this can be quite onerous on the parish, and we all try and make an annual provision to cover those costs. But when you come to how should we say, putting a new roof on or some major structural repairs,
Do you think
the income?
Do you think the parishes should continue to maintain the parish churches?
It's a balance of heritage versus religious need, and every parish is slightly different. And I would speak for St Bernard's in saying that we have what I would describe as a church estate, which is really quite valuable from a heritage point of view. So the question is, should the parish walk away from that and let, we say, Jersey Heritage pay for it? Other parish churches perhaps have a different position in the parish, but you know they all actually are quite prominent. And
It's certainly something that Guernsey has now stopped. The parishes have stopped funding.
So I gather, and it might be a slippery slope to, should we say, the maintenance of those properties not being continued, which would be very sad.
Okay. So looking ahead then to sort of 10, 20 years' time, what do you see as the biggest risk to the sustainability of the parish system if no change is made?
I think a point you made earlier is contribution by parishioners into it is really important, because it is a democratic structure, but people have to contribute. So in these days of as I alluded before, different media platforms, the question mark is how best to attract people. And we do, in the Comité, exercise our minds as to how best to do that. So there's no question about that. We like to be open and receptive. We like to, should we say, provide the services as we do at the moment in a stable form. My take is that parishioners generally like stability. They don't like change all the time, but that's not to say we shouldn't change for the better and adapt to today's requirements where needed.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else that you want to tell us?
I don't think so. I think the only thing I would say with regard to the parish structures, which I mentioned earlier, they're quite small, and it's run on a fairly tight shoestring, and in comparison with government, where we have seen this massive growth, we haven't grown in the same way. And whilst there might be an expectation sometimes from government that the parishes should do more and more and more, we're always conscious of the additional costs that might incur, and that might indicate an initial resistance. It's not an initial resistance because we don't want to do it, it's just we know what it's going to cost. So I think there has to be an understanding, and perhaps as we see government numbers diminish, I suspect, in the next few years, that might be a bit of a reality check. But we're not resistant to being involved, but the government has to realise we just don't have unlimited resources.
Deputy Curtis, did you have any
No,
questions?
I think that's it.
Connétables Honeycomb online, did you have any further questions?
Sorry, I didn't quite get that.
Have you got any further questions?
No, I'm fine. I think thanks very much, Mike, for the contribution that you put. I think the big thing that I find that it's always coming around to election time. We've got everyone sort of knocking the parishes and trying to centralise things. I mean, I think what people forget is there's 12 parishes and they've all got their own traditions within those parishes. And I think that's what we need to be minded of for the future, that, you know, I think that we must maintain what we've got. I think there's the major problem is that it's more government interference, more centralisation. You know, we've got the island-wide rate now, which costs us a fortune. We've lost the election. You know, I don't feel that we require any further, government intervention, personally.
Okay, thank you.
Could I just comment on Richard's point with regard to elections? He's absolutely right. I mean, prior to the interventions, if I call that, by government, we've had interventions by government, by the CPA, now by the electoral authority. You know, prior to that, the parish secretaries ran the elections remarkably efficiently. They were the electoral authority in the parish was usually the senior procureur. So that's all been almost pushed to one side, and I don't think there's been a great advantage. I know it was dictated by what the Venice Convention said, and I did speak at one point to one of the CPA representatives, and the suggestion was, well, if you've got a system that works, leave it. But we haven't left it. We've interfered with it. We've got all these levels of, should you say, I suppose, oversight now. Is it helpful? Don't think so. But really the crux of the matter is we want more people to vote. So the more complicated you make it, the less it's going to be. So I don't think there's much confidence in the proposed increased turnover for this election. We all hope that it will be. Not sure if it's going to work. But as Richard said, parishes are quite good at running elections, and past performance can dictate that. So we'll see what happens.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for attending today. We appreciate that. On that basis, I'm going to close.